We all make promises, right? Every single day. I'll call you back, let's grab coffee, or even something huge like you're hired. But have you ever stopped to think about what separates a casual promise from one that a court will actually enforce? What's that magic ingredient that turns a simple yes into a legally binding contract? Well, that's exactly what we're going to dive into. So let's just get right to it. Is every single promise you make legally binding? I mean, if you promise to call a friend back and you forget, can they sue you? The short answer is, of course, no. But the reason why, now that's what really gets to the heart and power of what a contract is. And here it is, the core definition. A contract isn't just an agreement, it's a promise with legal teeth. It's a promise that the law will actually back up and enforce. And that right there is the crucial difference. If a contract is broken, the legal system can step in. With a simple broken promise, well, you're kind of on your own. So, how is a contract actually built from the ground up? You know what? Let's think about it like building a house. The very first step, before you do anything else, is the blueprint. And in the world of contract law, that blueprint is what we can call the handshake moment, that point where two people forge a mutual agreement. You know, every single agreement, no matter how complex, boils down to these two fundamental actions. One person has to put a clear deal on the table, that's the offer, and the other person has to agree to that exact deal with no changes, and that's the acceptance. It's this simple, essential dance that gets the whole thing started. But, and this is a big but, not every proposal is a formal offer. The law makes this really crucial distinction between a real solid offer and something called an invitation to treat. See, an offer is a clear proposal like, I will sell you my car for $5,000. You say yes, boom, you have a contract. An invitation to treat, on the other hand, is more like a price tag in a store. It's an invitation for you to make an offer to buy the item. Think of it as the difference between saying, here's the deal versus, so, want to make a deal? Now, an offer doesn't just hang around forever, it has a definite life cycle. Of course, it can be accepted, which creates an agreement, or it can be rejected, which kills it completely. But here's a critical point. Making a counterproposal, like offering, say, $4,500 for that car instead of $5,000, that also terminates the original offer. At that moment, you become the one making a brand new offer. Okay, so we have our blueprints. The offer and acceptance are locked in. But a blueprint alone doesn't make a house stand up, right? Now we need to build a solid foundation. This next part is our checklist for all the legal permits and materials we need to make sure this contract is legally sound. Right. For an agreement to actually be recognized by the law, it needs to satisfy a very specific checklist. This isn't about some vague feeling of agreement, it's a precise formula, and it turns out there are 8 essential elements that have to be there to give our contract house a rock-solid foundation. And here they are, the 8 essentials. We've already covered the big one, offer and acceptance. Now, while all of these are important, we're going to zero in on 2 of the most critical and honestly most often misunderstood ones, consideration and capacity. Every contract has to be a two-way street. That's really what consideration is all about. It's the value that each person brings to the table. It could be money, a product, a service, or even a promise not to do something. And here's a really fascinating point of law. The consideration must have some value, but the law doesn't care if it's a fair value. So if you sold your car worth 10 grand for just $1, as long as that dollar was actually exchanged, the contract is probably valid. A court isn't going to step in and save you just because you made a bad deal. Next up is capacity. And this one's pretty straightforward. It's about who is legally allowed to enter into a contract in the first place. The law recognizes that certain people, like minors or those with specific mental disabilities, might not fully grasp the consequences of what they're signing. So these rules aren't there to stop them from ever making agreements, but they exist to protect them from being exploited in a deal they don't truly understand. So, our contract house is designed, and it's built on a solid legal foundation. But what happens when a wall cracks or the roof starts to leak? What happens when one party just breaks their promise? This is called a breach, and the law has a whole toolkit of remedies to try and fix it. A breach of contract is, well, exactly what it sounds like. It's when one party fails to deliver on their end of the bargain, and they don't have a valid legal excuse for it. It's that moment that the legally binding promise is officially broken. So the promise is broken. What now? Does everyone just throw up their hands and walk away? Not at all. The law doesn't just give up. It provides a toolkit of solutions, and we call these remedies. They're designed to try and make things right for the person who was wronged. Let's take a look at the main tools in that kit. These are 4 of the most common legal remedies you'll see. First, you've got rescission, which basically just cancels the contract as if it never even happened. The most common fix by far is damages, where a court orders the other party to pay money to compensate for whatever loss was suffered. A much rarer one is specific performance, where a court literally forces them to do the exact thing they promised. You usually see this for one-of-a-kind things like a piece of art or a specific house. And finally, an injunction is a court order to stop someone from doing something that would violate the contract. And all this brings us to a final, really modern question. These principles offer acceptance consideration. They were crafted over centuries for face-to-face agreements. But today, our handshake is often a single click on an I agree button for 100 pages of terms and conditions we never read. So in this world of digital clicks and endless fine print, what does a true handshake, a real meeting of the minds, even mean anymore?